always something to talk about in Penguin land. Bryan Rust gets a big contract extension. Surprises the heck out of me this weekend. I'm going to spend the first segment talking about that, give my reaction and analysis to it, and what it could be moving forward for the Penguins. Ron Hextall finally spoke to the media on Monday. Going to give my thoughts on that and what to potentially expect for the offseason. And also some updates from Elliotte Friedman on 32 Thoughts with the contract situations with Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is to cover this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. So, excuse me. As I said in my intro, Penguins, they're obviously they're never boring, and it's funny. I was playing, Fortnite, and yes, people still do play that game, even though it is 4 to 5 years old with my good buddy Jeff, who's on Penguins Twitter. And I think 2 people DM'd me and they said W. I'm like, and it was a Darren Dreger tweet. I'm like, okay, this is probably a contract tweet. And I expected to see Evgeny Malkin or Chris Letang on there, and I saw it was a Bryan Rust. I was like, what? Is that I had to make sure that was the real Darren Dreger account 2 or 3 times to make sure that was not a fake, because I know everyone that probably listens to the show knows what my take was on Bryan Rust. I thought he was gone. Honestly, the ratio of him staying was probably 5% to 95% gone. I did not think the Penguins were going to keep him. I thought he was going to price himself out. I figured the contract would be 6 times 6, 6 times 6.5, kind of maybe like the Zach Hyman deal, where maybe a team gives him 7 years on the open market. So I was like, okay, it's going to be a 6-year term. And I tweeted, obviously, I was like, okay, let's see the number here. Are the Penguins going to get a hometown discount? Did they pay too much to sign him? And then when the number came out, I think it was Frank Zarabelli, then Elliotte Friedman, and a couple of the Josh Yohe, a couple of the Penguins reporters, 5.125. I was like, all right, is that real? And I obviously made sure that all the check marks were on the accounts. And at the end of the day, this was a hometown discount for the Penguins, and I know what Bryan Rust said. I want a number that's fair. I want to be paid my worth. But at the end of the day, he only got a raise of $1.6 million. Like, he was making 3.5 on that contract that Jim Rutherford signed him after the 2016-17 Stanley Cup run, where he obviously got a raise, and rightfully so, with how he played during those 2 cup runs. But the fact that he only got a $1.6 million raise, that's a steal by Ron Hextall. I know he's had his hits. I know he's had some misses as of late. This is a hit, a very job well done. He easily could have went out on the open market and gotten a contract from another team that was 6 times 6, 6 times 6.5, potentially even 6 times 7. Steve Yzerman, I think, was probably ready to, give him a blank check. I think Josh Yohe of The Athletic said that was one of the teams that was really interested in him. I think Bryan is from Michigan anyway. I'm sure there's a bunch of other teams in both conferences that did not make the playoffs this year that would have loved to get their hands on him, just because, he has that cup winning experience. He's almost a point per game player. These players do not grow on trees. And again, the fact that the Penguins, they got him for only 5.1 million, it's basically 6 years, 32 million. Just a really job well done. And that opens up possibilities now for them to bring back Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin. But the top line, it's going to stay intact going into next season. Get Jake Guentzel, Sidney Crosby, and Bryan Rust. The Penguins are probably going to get at least 3 good years out of Bryan before the contract potentially starts turning sour. And, I saw some of these takes on Twitter. Well, you can't sign him for 6 years. And it's like, years 4 through 6 or potentially 5 through the last 2 years of the deal. Who gives a crap? The team is going to probably be really bad at the end of that contract, because Sidney Crosby and Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin, if they sign, they all may retire at the end of that point, and then it doesn't really matter because the team is just going to stink. So, at the end of the day, that really doesn't bother me too much. As long as you get 3 pretty good years until Sid's contract is up in 2025, it's really not a big deal to me. I obviously understand that he is 30 now, so the wheels could fall off at any point. But he had another very good season this year for the Penguins. Of course, as I look up his hockey reference page here, in the regular season, 58 points in 60 games. In the playoffs, 8 points in the 7 games. 2 of those were goals. Going back the last 3 seasons, 27 goals, 56 points in 55 games in 2020, 42 points, 56 games last season. This past season, 60 games. He was banged up a little bit, 58 points in 60 games. 2 out of the last 3 years, he has been at a point per game pace or better. I applaud Ron Hextall for locking him up and getting him at a number that he honestly should probably not have gotten him at. 6 years, that definitely helps. I think Ron touched on it at the presser today, where he said that was the main reason why they went 6 years, was because so they could get the AAV down a little bit, which obviously helps their salary cap situation. Per cap friendly, the Penguins have about $23.2 million in cap space. So again, they have the money to pay these 3 players. It's all a matter of what do you do on the outer edges of the roster? Who comes in? Who moves out? You can cheat the salary cap. Some people always tell me, well, the cap exists, and sure it does, but teams finagle their way out of cap hell like it's nothing. Teams will always be looking to help other teams out and free them of their cap problems. The Penguins, they have some assets they could potentially move out. Brian Dumoulin, maybe Jason Zucker. If you want to move Brock McGinn, that could potentially happen. But at the end of the day, this was still a very nice contract, and I think it's one that's going to age, I think, like fine wine for at least the first half again before it potentially turns sour for that second half. Just really can't say anything negative about it. I mean, again, I was definitely concerned when I saw that the contract was close to being agreed to because I thought that was going to be an overpayment, but Burke and Hexdall, they got the job done, and this is, I will say this too. For those out there that thinking, oh yeah, Penguins window's done, they're going to go rebuild now. No, this is a big indication that they want to go all in until Sid retires. The Fenway Sports Group is all in on the management. It looks like Ron Hextall wouldn't have signed that contract, but with Bryan Rust, and he would have given a press conference today if he wasn't going to be here for at least the next season. So they're ready to go all in for at least this next season and probably again until the end of Sidney Crosby's contract. So overall, to wrap this all up, great contract. It helps other players potentially stay, like Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. Anytime you can get a player to take a little bit of a hometown discount, that's huge. And sometimes, players don't want to pack up their bags and leave. It looks like Brian and his wife and his kid, Hunter, and I'm dead serious, his kid is named Hunter. It looks like they love being in Pittsburgh, and he said at his press conference that was the number one goal, to remain in Pittsburgh, and sure enough, they were able to get the job done and sign that contract. So, I'll take the L on this one. I thought there was really no chance that this was going to happen. I said probably 95% that he's gone. I was kind of focusing on them signing Rakell. That's probably not going to happen now. And oh yeah, just to put this out there, I've seen some takes on social media and other places that Rakell is better than Bryan Rust. I like Rakell, and I thought he was good when he came over here, but to say that he's been better than Bryan Rust over the last 3 seasons is kind of a joke. Rust has a point per game in 2 of his last 3 seasons, 3 straight years of 20-plus goals. Rakell, I understand, he's been with Anaheim for most of his career, but I don't think he's nearly as good as Bryan. And, he's probably going to go out on the open market, maybe get $4 to $4.5 million per. Right now, I don't think that's going to be coming from the Penguins, to say the least. So again, I will gladly take the L on this one. The Penguins are bringing back Bryan Rust. So coming up in the next segment, we're going to get into Ron Hextall's end of the season press conference, touch on what he spoke about, and I'll give my thoughts in reaction to that. Now, before we get to that, though, our next partner is a product that I use every single day, and that is Athletic Greens. I started taking it because, I didn't really have a lot of time to go to the gym just because I worked, long hours during the day. I have a couple of days where I have 9 to 6s, 11 to 8, sometimes even a 2 to 11. I kind of want more energy. I wake up sometimes pretty tired in the morning. Maybe that's because I go to bed super late, but that's also my fault. But so what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery focus, and the aging. All of those things. So again, I usually take it, when I get up 9:30 for my early days, when I try to sleep in maybe 10 to 10:30. Now, for some facts about this, it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's also the one thing with the best thing. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product irritations and third-party testing. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. They have over 7,000 5-star reviews. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every single day, and that's it. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, I'm back on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, getting to Ron Hextall's press conference from today, it is about damn time that he talked to me. It's been over a week. I guess he wanted to, get his thoughts and everything. But so Hexdall again confirmed he would like to keep Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. He said kind of in a perfect world, but again, he said they're in discussions. Obviously that's their number one priority right now. He even said as such during the press conference, that they have a lot of, I'm sure, balls in the fire, but their biggest priority is to bring back 2 of the core players. They've already brought back Bryan Rust. Again, they have $23 million in cap space right now. You can bring back these 2 players. You give Evgeny Malkin a discount, maybe give him that $7.1 million per, bump Letang's AAV up to maybe 8 or something like that. That's $15 million. You still have $8 million left in salary. And oh yeah, by the way, you can also open up other salary by moving players out. Just doing a few exchanges. There's plenty of salary dumps that I've seen this team do over the years. Remember, Buffalo at the time took Matt Hunwick and Connor Sherry from the Penguins. They dumped Nick Bukestad to the Minnesota Wild. They dumped Eric Goodbranson's $4 million salary to make room for John Marino. Yes, I understand those are different regimes, but teams are always willing to help out. So the Penguins, there's really no excuse for this. If they have what it takes to get it done, they have the cap space to get it done. It's all up to, how far do they want to, I guess, bend, with these negotiations. I think that's really the big thing here, at least in my opinion. So again, I don't want to hear the excuses if one of these 2 walk. They have the cap space. It is really not an issue right now. So still good for Ron to say that, though, that it is their biggest priority. Hexdall was also touched on the Penguins' performance in the playoffs. He goes, we certainly felt like we were definitely in the driver's seat in that series. We thought we were a good enough team that we could have gotten it done. Our plan is to continue to try to win a Stanley Cup, and Fenway Sports Group is on board. He also touched on the Sidney Crosby hit. He thinks there was a little bit of intent from Jacob Trouba. He also he went after Jacob Trouba a little bit in that press conference. He thought there was definitely intent on the hit on Jake Guentzel about 20 seconds into a game 5 when the Penguins had that 5-on-3. And, good on Hextall for calling that out. Obviously, he's going to defend his players. I think any GM in that situation would. But it is past time where we get these cheap little headshots out of the game. Hextall said as such during his media press conference today. Obviously, nothing can be changed that the Penguins blew the 3-1 series lead. But I did like that he stuck up for 2 of the core players and said, it looked like there was a little bit of intent there, whether it was to injure or make sure they couldn't get to the puck. I don't know, but he said that he didn't really like the way the hits were seen. But I agree with him on that. I'm glad that the Fenway Sports Group is all in on this, on getting to another Stanley Cup, and they also will gladly spend their money to do that. Other things here as I'm scoring my timeline. Hexdall, he did say again, first and foremost, they would like to sign Gino, but he did say if that can't happen, they will look elsewhere for a number 2 center. He did not say that for looking for a number 1 defenseman for Chris Letang, which again, that kind of lines up with what I was tweeting out today with when Elliotte Friedman was on 32 Thoughts and saying it sounds like the negotiations with Letang could be a bit closer right now than they are with Evgeny Malkin. And again, I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but my take on this, this is what I think. It is easier to replace a second-line center than it is a number 1 defenseman, which is why Chris Letang should be their biggest priority going into next season. Yes, do I want both back? Absolutely. But I think if you can get Letang done, which is the harder one, then you can get Malkin done. And then I think, it's totally fine from there. Because, again, look at some of the second-line centers in the playoffs. Ryan Strome, of all people, with the New York Rangers, Carolina, their center depth. I mean, they have good players, but, is their second-line center elite? Not really, at least in my opinion. St. Louis, they have a deep forward group, but is there a second-line center an elite player? No, excuse me, I almost had a hiccup. No, I do not think so. So, that's why I think, how he said that, because, they can go out, get a second line center in free agency, aka Vincent Trocheck, if he is available, that can come in and play for any of Evgeny Malkin's place. Again, I don't want it to come to that, but I think that's maybe why he did say that, because, again, it's easier to replace a 2C than it is a number 1 D. Now, I think Mike DeFabo asked a pretty interesting question. He asked, what is missing from the team? And he did say a little more cap space would be nice. I kind of made a little joke about it, but I also think that he is a little bit serious in that regard. I think Hexdall would love to shed some salary, at least in my opinion. This is a team that, even if they do sign Sidney Crosby, Chris Letang, and Evgeny Malkin. All right, I had to actually pause my recording because I'm sure if everyone that was on YouTube watching, my wonderful German Shepherd decided to come downstairs and just basically attack me. So that was what you all saw, my massive 65 to 70 pound German Shepherd. Anyways, get back to what I was discussing. They have the cap space again to sign Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang, but they still need to get a little more cap space. Get Brian Dumoulin, his $4 million. Teams, I think, will take that contract on. He's still a good player. He has that Stanley Cup experience. He's a good defensive defenseman. A team will decide to trade for him. Jason Zucker, love the guy. He makes $5.5 million. In a perfect world, you maybe move on from him and get all of that cap space. You don't have to retain any of it. There's almost $10 million right there. Brock Begin, 2.75 if you want to move on from him, even after just a rough season. That could potentially be a thing too. So again, even if they do sign both Letang and Malkin, I would not be surprised if Hexdall goes out and still make some other changes, add some cap space going in free agency where they can, make a splashy addition or two, or, get a player back in a trade that doesn't make enough money. Say, an example could be like in a trade, Oli Mata to Chicago, remember, and they got Dominic Cahoon back and they saved well over $3 million against the cap. So maybe something like that happens during the offseason with Hexdall on another team. Who knows? At this point, Ron also talked about Kasperi Kapanen. He says, we certainly expect more from him next season. I'm not really going to read too much into that. I think, honestly, it's kind of GM speak. He's obviously going to get qualified. That's the right call. The only way I bring Kasperi back is if, he's making like a 1-year prove it cheap deal, like 1.5 million. He can't be making 3.2 million like he was next season. I mean, and that's contract malpractice. He did not earn that type of contract going into next season. If he is brought back, I definitely think it's going to be for a cheap cap hit, just to see if this last season was, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of an outlier, or, if he can actually get back to where he was during the 2020-21 season, where he had 30 points in 40 games, 10 of those goals. Otherwise, I don't think there was too much other stuff from Ron Hextall today. Very, very quiet. He didn't really divulge too much of their offseason plan. Pretty quiet. I think someone asked about the goaltending situation. He didn't really say if he wanted to get another backup behind Tristan. He's keeping this to himself. This is how he is. This is not Jim Rutherford over here, people. He's not going to come out and candidly say, "Oh, I'm going to go make some changes," or "I'm going to go out and look for trades," like Lou Lamoriello said after the Islanders season. We're just going to have to wait and see. Hextall said he doesn't negotiate through the media. Said they're continuing to having contract discussions with the big two, and we're going to have to see what happens here throughout the offseason. So that was everything that Ron Hextall said to the media on Monday, and just my thoughts on that. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to get to Elliotte Friedman's take on 32 Thoughts and just my analysis on that. Before we get to that, though, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. You can head to the website today or use your phone to learn more about the trends in action that is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I'm back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. So Pittsburgh SB Nation was kind enough to put my tweet in there where I recorded what Elliotte was saying after when he spoke about the Bryan Rust contract on the on 32 Thoughts Day. And Elliotte reported, said, one of the things I heard was that the 5.125 number is very close to what Rust wanted and what the team wanted. They didn't get 100% of what they wanted for sure, but they got to a point where it was close enough that everyone was happy enough and shook hands and said, that's good. It sounds like the Penguins are hoping they can do that with both Letang and Malkin, but this is the kicker from what Friedman said. He said, I think that's going to be harder to do with Malkin's case right now. It sounds like to me that they're closer to that in Chris Letang's case. So, again, from what I gathered from that, it sounds like the Chris Letang contract negotiations are going a bit better than Evgeny Malkin's. I mean, Gino, he definitely seemed a bit hurt, I think, at his end of season media availability. I think obviously they're going to get around to him. But again, I do think Letang should be a higher priority right now. Maybe he is a bit hurt in that regard, but once you get him done, if you do, Letang, that is, you can go to Evgeny Malkin, and then you can really, just finish that, and then you can get to the rest of your offseason. But again, Elliotte finished up. He goes, what this says to me is that the Penguins are saying, we will give a little bit in our contract talks, but we want you to give a little bit too. So, they don't want the players to just, have this straight up asking price and sticking to that, and then have the team have this and they're sticking to that. They want to find that common ground like they did with the Bryan Rust and say, hey, this is probably not our best offer. This is probably not what you fully want. But at the end of the day, this is how the contract negotiations work. Right. So, definitely some interesting comments from Friedman. There's a long way to go here with this. Remember, Friedman reported last week that the Penguins originally offered a contract, I believe it was 4 years for Letang, that it was a little below his current AAV, which was 7.25, which is about to expire. I know there's been reports out there that they lowball both Letang and Malkin with 3 times 15. I'm not really sure how much I buy that. But it's a process. It's a process. There's still plenty of time before July. They have what it takes to get this done. It's all a matter of, we'll see what's going to happen here. So that wraps up this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the show. I will be back with another episode on Tuesday. I'll have plenty of topics to discuss as always. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will be back tomorrow.